Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coverings 2017. We are here on day 3 in the Crossville booth, and I am Lindsey and Waldrep with Crossville. So today we're talking design trends, and it's going to be super fun because we've got Nikki Vega with us of Bluetree Design. Now, we just met Nikki recently because she's the designer of one of the tiny houses here in the installation showcase. And then we've also got John McClain of John McClain Design and Gilded Home. Now, we at Crossville met John because we were surfing through House, like everyone else does, and saw this amazing shot that he had done with our side view glass, and we had to get to know him. So Nikki and John are going to be talking to us a little bit and lifting the veil and get the real dish on design. Both Nikki and John represent not only the divergence of what is defined as popular, but they also are showing us how trends converge because good design is good design regardless of the style or setting. So speaking of that, looking into Pinterest and House and everywhere else that we all go for inspiration, there seem to be monikers or names for every kind of design. We were talking before on some of those trend names like farmhouse chic and eco glam. But what are some of the stalwart trends each of you are seeing right now?
Well, you're right. There are the farmhouse chic, which I think is such an overdone term, and I'm so sick of hearing about it. But I do think that industrial design is sort of here to stay. I think that that's a popular trend that's not going anywhere. And that sounds a little bit better than farmhouse chic, in my opinion. But it's really all over the board, and I think our poor clients are just inundated with all these images and all these beautiful things that they see online, and they really don't know where to land. And sometimes they're just enamored by a certain color or a certain look, and it would never work in their home, but they just love how it looks on TV or on print, and it's more editorial, I think, than practical in their homes. So call it what you want, but good design is good design, I think, and bad design is bad design, really, right? I mean, there's so many labels you can put on it.
I agree. I think the industrial look is definitely still popular, but I think it's starting to move to more of a soft color palette with the industrial metals. A lot of my clients are wanting that wood, the white wood look, and the softer wood tones as well. So I think that the hard industrial lines are really softening up, and it's a nice combination.
Fantastic. This is totally off the grid, but because we started to go down here, do you think that some of the more editorial sites like House and Pinterest, do they help you do your job with your clients, or do they kind of overwhelm your client and you kind of have to sort through the puzzle pieces when they bring you their inspiration?
I try to make it a rule that my client can only bring me pictures up to a certain point because they're constantly wanting to change their mind with all of those ideas that they can't stop. So I think it's definitely overwhelming. It's helpful to source, but when the client is trying to shop on Pinterest, it's definitely a lot for them to go through.
Yeah, and there are just as many Pinterest fails as there are Pinterest successes. Let's all remember that. So they see these things again that they just love, and they have to have it in their house, but there's no way it could work in there. And they're also, because they see so many different images, they are easily distracted, I think, and they move down this path and move down that path. We had a client who loved to travel, and every trip that he took, he would change his design aesthetic with whatever country he visited, and so everything was
guilty.
Yeah, we're going from Italy to Greece, and it was like, okay, find somewhere and land on it. But I do think that people don't really understand the entire process with design, I think, and if they knew, if consumers really knew the process that went behind, changing a simple room out can take weeks and days sometimes. So it's not as easily done as they think, and as it's not done in 30 minutes like on TV as well, unfortunately.
I wish that it went that easy, because if we've ever lived through a demo or remodel or these sorts of things, there gets to be that morning when you're going through the house with no flooring and they have no tile installed or anything, and you're just like, I just want my coffee without any nails on the floor.
Well, or they're trying to do it all themselves, which is bad for a lot of reasons. We don't have a job, for number one, but then it's also bad because it turns out not well.
Well, let's get back a little bit to the trends, John. And looking at your gorgeous portfolio on your website, it reveals that you like to incorporate a lot of luxe finishes throughout your projects.
Guilty.
So how do you see glam style playing well with the sustainable outlook on design, both in your interiors and in your furniture line?
I do love glam, I do. And I think part of that's because I worked in LA for a while and I sort of did a lot of homes where that was really popular, and that just sort of becomes a part of who you are. But sustainability can work in any design, I think, whether it's glam, whether it's farmhouse chic, whatever it is, it'll work into it because it's the product itself. Like, for instance, a lot of the Crossville products are so cool because tile in itself is an inherently sustainable product. It's a clean product. It doesn't have mold or mildew, that sort of thing. But I also try to think about where my products are manufactured, how far the travel time is that they get to the site. I have a woodworker that I use a lot on site, and so he'll build a lot of the custom cabinetry that I use, a lot of the built-ins that I use, and his office, his factory is like right down the street. So little things like that do play into the sustainability of something. And I use a lot of reclaimed wood as well in some projects too. So there's a lot of ways to work that in there, I think.
Well, Nikki, you do a lot of high-end hospitality and high-end residences, but you contrast that with your passion for tiny houses, like what you're doing here. Tell me a little bit about that trend and how it works as far as with finishing things, but accommodates a minimalist lifestyle.
So I think that people these days, in all ages, but mostly young people, really are moving towards more of a minimal lifestyle, and that freedom and that mortgage-free lifestyle, not having that big mortgage, and the tiny house just fits perfectly. The tiny house encourages outdoor living most of the time, and you'll see in our tiny house showcase, we've got a lot of big exterior doors that really bring the outdoors in. And it's just fun. It's about meeting your needs only and being able to experience other things. So.
Now, when we think about tiny houses and some of the things that we do see on those popular TV shows, they do seem to be pared down, whereas your tiny house, I hope everybody goes by and takes a look at it, and we will be filming it on live later this afternoon when everything finishes, but you've chosen to really incorporate a variety of finishes, including some that have a little bit of sass and glam to that. Talk about how you're mixing materials there.
So with the tiny houses, you don't have a lot of wall space at all, so there's not a lot of room to bring in bright pops of color other than when you're doing a permanent installation like tile. So we ran a very colorful Crossville product, the groove glass mosaic, along the wall, and it's still very subtle tones, and we paired it with a nice, very light gray wood plank. So it's not too overwhelming, but it still just builds that personality right into the space without taking up any usable space for storage or hanging space.
So in the house, you were able to use the gauged porcelain tile panels. Our brand is Laminate, but for your countertop surfaces. I know, John, that you like to use a lot of natural stone in your projects. Talk to me for a minute about how some of these new advances in materials are affecting your selections, and if they are, where you might use them, especially on the panels right behind us are these big book-matched pieces of tile instead of stone. So evolution of what you're seeing here on the show and how you're using it.
Well, specifically the Laminate product, it being so lightweight, it's perfect for my tiny house line. Weight is a huge consideration when you're moving these things down the road. So that was amazing. We ran it on a few walls in the bathroom and as well as all of our countertops, and we were able to make a beautiful waterfall edge with a mitered corner. So very diverse product, and we love it.
I use a lot of natural stone, but I also use a lot of porcelain that looks like natural stone for the right client, because a lot of clients aren't very clean and they don't have the ability to retain the way something looks when they get it, So I do like to mix the natural with the porcelain, but the porcelain planks, I was just telling Nikki earlier, I fought those for so long, and I said, I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to put those, the ones that look like wood.
Yep.
But they're so much different now. The patterns are so detailed. The coloring is so great. The variation in the patterns is amazing. So I think I might have to use those too.
Well, and you can put them places that you wouldn't be able to put real wood, and I
know.
earlier in my career in the industry, I was a knothead and would tell people, no, you can't put wood in a bathroom, or standing water, blah, blah, blah. Now we've got in our line these amazing wood parquet mosaics that you can use with a linear drain.
I saw them. They're beautiful.
In our new nest line,
Yeah.
and so you don't have to stop your aesthetic to accommodate a design need. So I do think the industry's kind of responding in lots of different ways to that. And I do think we all love white marble, but red wine does not. So.
No. And a bachelor client does not do well. I have repolished one countertop probably 3 or 4 times already for this one guy. It's down. It was 3 centimeters. Now it's down to like this.
Because it does happen.
Yeah.
So we're at a tile trade show, obviously, in a tile manufacturer's booth. I'd love to hear from each of you about what tile styles you're currently loving, shapes, colors, etc., and what you're specifying, and how tile helps you achieve your design goals for your clients.
I am currently loving all of the geometric shapes. I love the octagons. In our kitchen in the tiny house, we used your product that has the octagon pickets with a square in the middle, and it's just beautiful. And I really, what I like to do with tile and how I like to use tile, it helps me divide spaces without walls. If you use it, different style tile in the kitchen and you run it into the living room, it helps to really divide those spaces and without putting up any kind of visual barrier, and it looks beautiful.
True. I particularly love the mix of different elements. So a mosaic that's mixed with a natural wood, with a stainless, with a porcelain or a stone. I think it's just gorgeous. And I've always loved patterns, but particularly now that they're much more prevalent, I think, in stone and in tile. They make, as you know, beautiful feature walls in certain rooms and showers and tub areas. So I love that. And I love the 3D tiles too. I think they're just amazing, that they have these gorgeous tiles that you can come up with all these various patterns on, but they're actually three-dimensional when you walk up and touch them. So they're fun.
Do you think then that tile is becoming or is being seen now more as a wall covering as opposed to a functional or utilitarian?
100%. 100%. Yeah. It's going on walls of staircases. It's on walls of living rooms. I do a lot of fireplace fronts with the tile as well. So it's definitely off the floor onto the wall now, I think. What do you agree, Nikki?
Completely. And in the hotels where we have big atriums in the entrance, we're tiling those entire walls with the thinner tile now. And it's easy to clean and it looks fantastic.
So we talked a little bit in our prep time about color. How do you like to see color? Tile industry is a sea of gray and grayish and beige and white, but how do you like to see color incorporated with tile, or how might you in your designs bring in color, and what are some colors that you're loving right now?
Right now, I'm really liking the pastels. I love the rose pink and the soft blues, and you'll see these that you all have that beautiful mosaic that's running in the tiny house. It's everywhere in fashion right now. People are saying that blush is the new beige, so that's definitely my kick. I'm on the pastels.
I'm not.
You're not.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I'm much more of a natural, classic kind of a color palette. I do like what you were saying earlier, how they soften them up and they're not as harsh as they used to be. So, the grays aren't as deep gray as they were, and the browns and the beiges are also a little bit lighter too. But like the tungsten color for your side view tiles is about as wild as I get. So I'll just be honest with you.
In case you haven't noticed, we actually tried to pair our designers for these different panel discussions with people who don't have the same opinions on things in their work.
But we still love each other.
But to make it really, really fun for everyone, because again, design is so all over the place right now, but when it's good, it's really great. So I think it's fun to compare and contrast, and as a moderator, I do tend to ask questions to kind of try and get a different viewpoint out.
Evil.
I'm that way, I know. So I'm going to start to wrap things up by asking you the question that I said I was going to, and John, you had an opinion. If there's one thing that's happening in design right now that you would like to abolish, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to round it off like as design in general, not just stone or tile or hard surfaces. I think that the matchy, the matching the same materials, whether it be the matching the materials, matching the furniture, I am So sick of it. And thankfully, you know, everyone has, I hope, started to come around to where they're learning that design is never going to be matchy-matchy anymore. It's always going to be a mixture of textures and materials and different types of, even down to the furniture, you know, in the room, you can choose different fabrics and so forth. So I just want everyone to not match anything anymore ever again. You can match it, you know, in tone and in texture, but do not put the same materials or the same furniture throughout your home. I am so sick of it. There are no bedroom suits or dining room suits anymore. Those are gone. I'm sorry.
You're not recommending a bed in a bag?
No bed. Hold on.
Okay. Nikki, do you have anything to add? Is there anything that you wish would be out of vogue for at least a little bit?
I tried to think about it, and I'm not coming up with anything, but I do agree with what you're saying, and I do think that most of the industry is kind of catching on to that. And it's working out nicely, but I can't put my finger on something that I'd like to get away with. I think that what we talked about, good design is good design, and if it's doing the right thing and it's right for the client and what the needs of the space, then, you know, I think it's totally allowable.
So my last question to wrap it up is kind of the opposite. If there was one thing, one word of sage advice that you could put out to the universe through the power of video and Facebook Live and YouTube that you wish all of your clients would know or would help any designer's client out there in the world, what would it be? What would you like to say to potential design clients as they enter the process?
You can go ahead and do that.
How long of a list can I make for this?
You get one.
One thing. Oh my God. I think the best thing to say would be know who you are as much as you can before you go to speak to a designer. Try to research things that you love, things that you're passionate about, things that you can see in your home. And so many people say, oh, I have no idea who I am, I have no idea who I like. And then I walk into their closet and I see their clothing and I say, well, you're showing me that you liked a lot of neutrals or whatever. So I think that if they really just sat down and spent some time pre-working, you know, doing their homework before they came to us, they would save a lot of billable hours on our time trying to find that out.
Do you need to have a lifestyle assessment worksheet? Like, when do you actually cook in your kitchen, or is it a glorified entertaining space for takeout? Or do you drink red wine? Or are you a single bachelor who spills things on your
exactly?
Do you dance? Do you pull a Cindy Crawford and dance on the countertop?
Right,
exactly.
Yeah. No, and I do have that questionnaire that I ask clients, but there's that whole stage that we have to do, the programming stage, because if you don't ask those questions, they're going to pop up somewhere, and then who's to blame? Us, right, in the end.
I agree. And I would also say my biggest piece of advice, and what I see clients sometimes not give enough credit to, is don't skimp out when it comes to lighting. Really pay attention to lighting. Let your designer highlight those design details and architectural details with lighting, because you'll always notice when lighting is bad, but when lighting is beautiful, it just enhances the space.
For example, if you have an amazing backsplash or some feature walls like you do in your tiny house, you want to highlight that.
Absolutely.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Nikki and John, for coming and talking to us for a minute. And you'll get more Facebook Live out there for the rest of the day and more videos on YouTube from us at Crossville during Coverings 2017.